Hey friends, what's going on? It's me, Vindy, everyone's favorite under 300 subscriber YouTuber, talking about Dragon Ball today. So I read the manga at the start of the year in January, basically first 2 weeks of January or something. I just read Dragon Ball, and I want to talk about it because there's a lot I want to say, and I think I kind of have an interesting perspective on the series that I want to discuss because I think it's something that most people who are going to be reading it nowadays or watching it or whatever don't have this same perspective. So I think I just want to talk about it because I have a lot to say about the series. But if you want to know my quick thoughts and then you're just going to turn it off if I say something bad, Dragon Ball is good. I like it a lot. It's fucking great. That being said, before I talk about the series, I think there's some personal context I should kind of get through because I think it really matters to understanding and framing a lot of what I'm going to be talking about with Dragon Ball. So first things first, I gotta disclose some stuff. So I was born in 1998, so I wasn't really little. I wasn't a kid, really, when Dragon Ball was on TV that much. By the time I was at an age where I would have been watching, anime as it was coming out, Naruto was the big one. I remember watching Naruto as it was coming out. I remember watching the Sasuke retrieval arc when that happened, and then there was the 60 episodes of filler when it was on Cartoon Network, and then it went to Disney XD, and I just stopped watching it at that point. So I never really saw Dragon Ball, and my only experience of it comes from video games, actually. I had Shin Budokai on PSP as a kid, and I played that. And the thing about Shin Budokai was, it had the story in it, but if you expect a 9-year-old kid who just wants to mash buttons and see cool shit happen on screen to read a visual novel story, that's not fucking happening, right? I had to read at school. I read for fun. If I'm playing video games, the last thing I want to do is ever read. So I in no way was reading the story, so I didn't get the story from that. I also had the card game on Game Boy Advance, but I never figured out how it played. So I played it a couple times. I don't even know how I got that game. No way I ever asked for it or anything. And then I had one of the Game Boy Advance video cartridges for GT. But it was episodes in the middle of the series or some shit. So I had no idea what was going on. Goku's a kid, so I thought it came before Z. Because I knew that in the Dragon Ball Z game I have, Goku's an adult. So I knew the big iconography, right? I knew character designs. I knew what Goku looked like. I knew what Vegeta looked like. I knew Cell. I knew Piccolo. I knew Frieza. I knew Trunks, but I didn't know anything about the characters besides that. So, for example, just one quick thing. Quick spoiler, minor spoilers for Dragon Ball. But if you know nothing, you probably didn't know this either. I didn't know Trunks was Vegeta's son. So that was something, that's an example of the very limited scope that my knowledge was in going into this. I knew almost nothing. My only other experience with it was when I rewatched Naruto in middle school, in 8th grade. And I was I'll watch Dragon Ball. And I knew that, I looked it up and saw Dragon Ball came before Z, so I was I'll watch Dragon Ball. I think I watched, half an episode and turned it off. So, almost no prior experience with Dragon Ball until as a 21-year-old guy, I decided to read them. As a 21-year-old guy who loves shounen manga, I decided to read Dragon Ball. And I think what's interesting about that is I have no nostalgia blindness for the series at all. There's nothing really holding me back from just looking at the series as it is, other than what I think of it. And, knowing its popularity. Because I never watched as a kid. I don't really have nostalgia for it. I have nostalgia for a video game, but not the characters, the story. All I remember is that there were 3 health bars and you would just spam the buttons and shit would happen. I never really figured out how to play the game. I don't think I got past Namek Namek? I don't know. Namek in the game. So to say that I know Dragon Ball at all or have any kind of nostalgia for it, any really prior feelings towards the series would just be wrong. I knew literally nothing. I knew what Super Saiyan was. I knew Kamehameha. I knew I'd seen the Super Saiyan 3 scene because of that Stereo Saiyan 3D video. But that was about it. I'd seen some stuff from Super, this doesn't matter, but I'd seen Super Saiyan Blue. Past just characters' designs, I had no knowledge on the series. Which I think is interesting because, again, that's not a perspective that I think most people talking about Dragon Ball, even here in general, but especially here on YouTube, I think have. And I want to kind of frame, I I want to make sure as we talk about this, that is kind of framed in the discussion, that nothing I'm saying comes from me watching it as a kid. I've never seen the anime, so nothing I talk about relates to the anime outside of just very general, like, writing stuff, because I haven't seen it. So the anime could change literally everything about the series, right? Bulma could be a dude, and I actually just wouldn't even know. So that's important to state. Besides that, there's a couple small things I want to get out of the way before we really get into it, just that I think it's important. So I'm gonna, even though the manga, it's all Dragon Ball, right? It's 46 volumes of a manga called Dragon Ball. I'm gonna call them Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, because I think there is a narrative shift at that point in the story, and most people know it is Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z because most people have seen the anime. So I think that framing the discussion is like that definitely will make it easier to understand. So I don't want comments saying, actually, Vindy, did you know that the manga is just all called Dragon Ball? There's no Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I know that. But I think what matters most is making the discussion easy to understand, and I definitely think that there is, again, a clear narrative shift there that I'm going to be talking about that I think is important. So I want to say beforehand, I'm making that distinction now. Also, obviously, because I'm going to be talking about the manga, I'm not going to talk about everything I want to say about the manga. I'll probably end up making another Dragon Ball video at some point, but I will be going into the manga as a whole. So there will be spoilers. So if you don't know Dragon Ball spoilers, and you also want to read it at some point unspoiled, probably don't watch the video, or watch it going in. That being said, I'm sure most people know spoilers or don't really care, so I don't think it matters that much, but I wanted to get that out of the way now. That being said, I actually want to start with my criticisms, because most of what I have to say is going to be positive, so I want to get kind of my main criticisms of Dragon Ball out of the way, because I'll call back to them a lot. So my biggest issue with Dragon Ball that I think persists throughout the entire series, and it's so funny, because it's so ironic that this is my main criticism, when I think that for most people who watched it, they have the opposite criticism. So my biggest issue with Dragon Ball is that I think it moves too fast. I think that consistently, the manga just pushes past everything, and there are a lot of times, like, for example, those 3 years in between, at the start of the Cell Saga, where Vegeta goes from just living with Bulma because it's a place he could stay in training, to having a kid. That's a time period where I would really have liked to see more of it. I would have liked to see more character interactions. And I've heard people say, for example, in the Saiyan Saga, the anime is better because it shows Gohan training with Piccolo. And I think that that's something that the manga could have used more of, is just more time with the characters outside of just the main story arcs and pushing. And I think even sometimes in the arcs, it almost moves too fast. And it causes this disconnect where people think that things come out of nowhere. And I don't think that that's the case. Like, I don't think that it's as bad as people make it out to be, but I do think that because of just this breakneck pace that the manga's at, where it's always moving forwards, it's kind of, it feels weird sometimes. And I think that you could have gotten more emotional, I don't want to say depth, but you could have had things land harder emotionally. I think if we saw more of these characters just interacting outside of, boom, we gotta fight, fight. So that's actually my biggest issue with the manga, which is funny because the anime is 300 episodes for 26 volumes of manga, which is gross. That is over 10 episodes a volume. That is ridiculous. So obviously the anime is too slow. So I think the best thing would be if there was some middle ground where you got a little bit more of like the slice of life, just character interactions, and you got, you know, the good pace. Because I think when an arc is moving, right? Like when everyone's on Namek for the Frieza saga, I think, yeah, the pacing is great because we don't really need it that slow, right? Everything is happening and it feels like there's a good amount of movement through the story. Part of this is also because Toriyama is a great fucking artist, and the way his kind of pages flow is fucking phenomenal. And so it reads super fast as you're going through it because there's just this flow to his pages, and you turn them, and so the art and the page layout and everything is really, really good. And so I think that makes the manga also read super fast. But either way, I definitely think that there is, I don't want to say a lack of content because there's a lot that happens, but almost there's so much in what feels like a way less amount of time. Like, I think you could have stretched Dragon Ball's 46 volumes out to like 60 volumes, and I don't think any quality would have been lost, and I actually think you would have gained some quality. That's my biggest issue, and I'll come back to it when we talk about some of the arcs later in more detail. Another issue is that all the human characters immediately, once you shift to the Saiyan saga, get shafted hard. Which, I guess it's fine because the Saiyans do get more focus, and I think all the Saiyans are more interesting as characters. Like, I would much rather see Gohan or Vegeta or Trunks than Tien do something. Or, I mean, Krillin's good, but, like, who the fuck cares about Tien? And Yamcha's good, okay, he's fun, but he's not... I don't give a fuck about Yamcha in the same way. Or fucking Yajirobe, like, no, I don't care. I think that because... Part of the issue is... First of all, anyone who says that the original part of Dragon Ball is more human... It's very Goku-focused. There is emphasis put especially on Krillin, but Krillin is also still in all of Z and is still important even if he's not fighting. He's doing things and he's there, especially in the Frieza saga. So I understand when people complain that the human characters get kind of shafted, and I do agree it's a little annoying that, like, Krillin's just kind of useless. But at the same time, it's not the biggest deal. However, I will say that out of the fact that all the humans get shafted, does come one of my favorite parts of the series, which is the way that Goku considers himself an Earthling and a human and wants to fight as an Earthling consistently. I really like. That's something I really like. He considers Earth his home. He fights for Earth, and it comes in the Buu saga where, you know, Mr. Satan might be the hero of Earth, but Goku's like Earth's warrior, right? I really, really like that. My other issue that's kind of going to transition us into the next point, but I do want to bring it up because it is a kind of an issue I have with the series, is I don't think Dragon Ball works that well as an adventure story. I have a bunch of reasons for it, but I'll get into it in a second because I do think it is kind of an issue. So those are my main 3 complaints. There are some other, you know, small things that I could kind of nitpick and bitch about, but again, I just kind of want to do a main video kind of overviewing the series and the perspective of what it's like reading it in 2020 for the first time. And those were the 3 things that really stuck out to me as, like, I wish these were better. You know, I wish Krillin did more or Master Roshi did more in the Z sagas. And I wish that it was slower or that the adventure story was either more interesting or, I don't know, there was less of a focus on it. But again, I think the adventure story gets better once we transition into Z. So that being said, I want to go to my next big talking point, which is I want to compare Dragon Ball versus Z and just talk about them because I think it's an interesting way to frame the discussion that will also allow me to talk about both in better detail. So I'm just going to get right into really quickly my big criticisms with it as an adventure series. So first of all, I just don't think that, like, Dragon Ball's world is interesting enough or well-defined enough, especially in this first section of the manga, to make an adventure set interesting. Like, for example, when I look at One Piece or Hunter x Hunter, I think those are really well-defined worlds. And so because of that, I think an adventure story is great because you're constantly learning more about these worlds and you're interested, and the world almost becomes a character, right? I think it'd be fair to say for One Piece, like, the Grand Line is a character. And I think that that's something that Dragon Ball doesn't have, especially because when you look at the adventure arcs, like the 2 main arcs that are the story as an adventure series, it's the first arc where they collect the Dragon Balls, and then it's Red Ribbon Army, right? And so when you're looking at just the first arc where they collect the Dragon Balls, they just go to like 3 different places, or they go to the different places, but it doesn't spend time establishing the setting. It's just, we go here, we get the Dragon Ball, we instantly move on. And I think the arc's like 2 volumes, so it's almost too slow, so I don't even want to criticize it that much, because it's the intro arc, and there's just not as much that happens. So then it's mainly Red Ribbon. And most people who say that original Dragon Ball is better than Z all cite Red Ribbon Army as, like, the main reason for that. And I think the only time that I get, like, good adventure vibes out of it is when it's in the snow. I don't remember the name of the snow town, but when they're at the snow and Goku, like, fights through that tower, I liked that part. I think most of Red Ribbon Army is just carried by Goku looking for the Dragon Balls and Goku himself. And that's why I really say that I think Dragon Ball, the original one, like, it's really Bulma, Krillin, and Goku. But even then, just mainly Goku. I mean, there's Master Roshi, and I mean, there are other human characters. Tien does stuff, but it is very much just a Goku story. And I think that does go away in Z, but I just think, like, the world isn't interesting enough to where I'm really invested in where they're going and what's happening. I also think if you want to talk about it is, oh, well, when they're looking for the Dragon Balls, that's, you know, it's about finding those. But I think that having the Dragon Ball radar makes actually getting the Dragon Balls trivial. And it's even, you know, kind of, not lampshaded, but it definitely just becomes trivial later on when someone's just like, oh yeah, I'll go get all the Dragon Balls. So I almost don't want to say that's an issue, but I think because I don't think it's an issue when it's an action series, right? Because the Dragon Balls aren't the focal point. But I think that when the Dragon Balls are the focal point and, like, the whole thing is we need to collect the Dragon Balls, I definitely feel that it's cheapened by how easy it is to find them. And, I mean, it's fine, especially later on, not just because it's not focused on the Dragon Balls as much, but also once, you know, they're found in the Red Ribbon Army, and it's been twice that their characters have gotten the Dragon Balls, it just becomes a thing where, okay, you know, we have Goku, one of the strongest people on Earth. We have all these other people that are just so strong that it's not really an issue. So I don't think that, like, the Dragon Balls being hard to find is something that stays being an issue, but I do think it is something that hurts it as an adventure story. I think it's hurt that the Dragon Balls are as easy to find as they are. I will say, I was talking about how I think it focuses on Goku mainly. I think that's overall, though, a positive thing, because I think that what ends up happening is you like Goku a lot because most of your time has been spent with mainly Goku, right? Like, for example, when he fights Tao Pai Pai and everything going on there, it's just Goku. When he's in the snow, it's just Goku. There are times, like, when they're in the underwater cave that Bulma and Krillin are there. And there are other times throughout the story, and at the Budokais, obviously, everyone's there. But I think that because we see the story mainly, there's a lot of times where it's Goku alone. I think that really helps endear you to Goku, and so you love Goku. So then when you get to points later on in the story, because you spend all this time with this character, you care about him, and I think that definitely helps it as an action series, where this series does, I feel, spend less time kind of almost letting you breathe and just spend time with these characters. I already brought it up, but almost all the human characters are introduced in this section of the story. And because the power levels keep growing, and eventually a large part of the reason Goku's power levels grow so high is because he's a Saiyan and not a human, there definitely is a thing where they're useless. But I almost think that you have to levy that criticism at original Dragon Ball, because who the fuck was able to fight Piccolo? Like, Krillin died instantly. Tien is fucking useless. The only thing Yamcha's good for is cheating on Bulma. So I don't think there's really any level of these characters being that useful. I think Bulma and Krillin are pretty useful throughout most of it up to then. But Tien, Chaozu, and Yajirobe are, like, three of the most useless characters of all time. And Yajirobe's actually fucking... In the Z shit, Yajirobe's more fucking useful than Tien is. The one time he shows up. Because he fucking cuts Vegeta's tail. Like, he actually does something. Unlike Tien and Chaozu, he dies and that's it. Like, there's nothing. The problem does definitely get worse in Z because we get more side characters that do more things. But I also think that the extra side characters that come in Z are better written characters. So it's almost like, I get the idea that every character should be equally fleshed out or every character should be good. But if I'm going to have characters that are better and characters that are worse, I would much rather get the better characters to have more screen time. So I'll talk about that more when we get to Z, but I definitely think that it's not that big a deal that Tien, Chaozu, and Yajirobe especially get nothing. Because I wouldn't call them that interesting to begin with. Like, the most interesting part of Tien is that he left his old master, right? And then you have Yamcha as well, who just doesn't really want to fight anymore and just gives up on it, which, I mean, that's fair. So I don't think that these characters are good enough that the story loses much by them not being in it. And it's fine if people like these characters, but I don't think that they have enough going on for me to really... There's no love lost in Z. Another issue I have with original Dragon Ball is that it has a lot of good moments, right? Again, I like Goku in the snow. Another moment I love in Red Ribbon Army is when Goku sees his grandfather. I loved a lot of the comedy with Bulma, actually. I thought Bulma was really funny. There was also the joke where Goku would pat people to... Like, he would pat them to see their gender. And then there was another point where he could tell, and Krillin messed it up. And he's like, Krillin, if you can't tell with your eyes, you have to pat him. Which was, like, a really funny joke that's stuck in my head since I read it. So I definitely think there is, like, good stuff in Dragon Ball, but one of the things until the Demon King Piccolo arc that I think it's missing really badly is there's just no solid villain. I mentioned Tao Pai Pai. I don't think he's solid enough. I've mentioned Tien. I don't think Tien's good enough. Jackie Chun's a good villain, I guess. I like Jackie Chun. The Red Ribbon Army doesn't... Like, the Red Ribbon Army, I feel, isn't strong enough as... not strong enough. But the Red Ribbon Army, especially not until Cell, just isn't interesting enough, really, to where you ever care. I guess that is, like, one of my big issues, and I think that's something that Z does well. Like, I like every villain in Z. And I'll talk about them in a little bit, but... So I do think that there is something lost from the series that's gained later by not having great villains until Piccolo. Again, though, it's still enjoyable. Like, I know I'm criticizing it a lot, but there's a lot of things to love. The comedy is really good. The art's great. There's this joke that's early on that I fucking love, which is something bounces up. I mean, it might be a Kamehameha, but I'm not too sure. But it bounces up and breaks the top of the panel and then down. And I love small, almost like meta manga jokes like that. And that's something Togashi did really well. So I definitely think, like, the comedy is really strong in this first part. And if you like Dragon Ball for its comedy and you think Toriyama's a great comedy writer, I'd understand someone liking the early part. But I think that the adventure parts are definitely hurt. And again, Togashi's art is great. It is a little bit rounder than it gets later in the Z stuff. But the art is still great. I'm not going to say that the rounder or the more angular one's better than the other. That's up to personal preference. I personally like the more angular designs, but that's also because they look cooler. But I don't think, like, Kid Goku would fit with the angular design. He looks really good with the much rounder face. It works for the kind of character he is. And you can see that almost just when you look at Kid Goku in the beginning and Goten later. I think Kid Goku has a better design because the more rounder face fits that character design better. So there's a lot that's really good. It's really easy to read. It's fun. I had a lot of fun reading it. There were moments that I really liked. The Budokais are great. I love the Budokais. Piccolo arc is really good as well. And the fact that OG Dragon Ball ends with Goku winning the Budokai is actually so fucking great, because when you think about it, you could almost look at the original Dragon Ball as just the story of Goku becoming the strongest on Earth, right? Because all the other Dragon Balls, he wasn't winning. And so there was always someone stronger than him. Even if it was Master Roshi in the first one. Or, I'm sorry, Jackie Chun. Who instantly Goku is better than. Goku is probably better than then. Same with, like, Tien. But he was losing. He still wasn't the strongest one. But once he beats Piccolo, he's now the strongest Earthling. And I think that's so great. Because now we take it... Like, when Goku's the strongest on Earth, there's only one place for the series to go, which is off of Earth. And we bring in things that aren't made on Earth. And so I think that that's one of the best parts of the series is the fact that Goku wins the Budokai, and it's a great transition to then get into Z, because now Goku's the strongest Earthling. What's next? And Saiyans are next. The Saiyan Saga's next. So now we're talking about Z, and if you can't tell, I should state this now. I think Z is better than original Dragon Ball. I think that the art takes a step up. Well, I think that the art does just get better just by nature of Togashi drawing more. So when I said earlier about the designs, I don't think the designs are better one way or the other. I do think the art takes a step up, though. And then I think that the main thing is, like, Toriyama, I definitely would say, gets better as a writer in Z. I think that there's more going on. I think that thematically it gets better. I think he introduces a lot of really interesting things with the series. And so I just think that it's great. Again, I mentioned the villains. The villains are all charismatic and enjoyable, right? I'm going to count Piccolo in this, even though Piccolo is original Dragon Ball, and I think thematically fits better with the original Dragon Ball, because even though we know later he's a Namekian, you see this, everyone thinks he's from Earth, and so by beating him, by beating Piccolo, Goku's now the strongest person on Earth, which is great. But Piccolo's great. The other thing that Z does, and I guess it happens in Dragon Ball too, because it happens with Yamcha and Tien, but one of my favorite things, like one of my favorite tropes, is the villain turned into a good guy, turned into like a friend. So we'll talk about the best example of it in a second, but Piccolo is really good about it. Watching Piccolo become Gohan's other dad is great, and then eventually Pan's third granddad. And I think what's great about Piccolo's arc, and it's with Vegeta as well, but Piccolo's arc to a good guy, it happens, and I mean almost immediately in the Saiyan Saga, he's good and doesn't turn bad again. But until he decides to admit that he's a good person, it takes until the Cell Saga. Like, he's still, even in Frieza, being like, no, I'm the Demon King Piccolo. Like, I'm evil, guys. Come on. Don't think we're friends. And then, eventually he absorbs Kami, God, whatever. Becomes a good guy. So, I think just as a character, Piccolo is great. I like his slower transition. I like that it takes that long for him to kind of get over that. So my favorite character in the series is Goku, and we're going to talk about characters in a minute. I think the best written character in the series is Vegeta, and Vegeta is fucking phenomenal. He's good in the Saiyan arc, great in Frieza, great in Cell, and fucking amazing in the Buu Saga. And I refuse to hear that Vegeta is not the best part. Well, we'll talk about Buu in a minute, but he's so good. First of all, he's just funny. For example, at the start of the Buu Saga, there you have Trunks and Goten. Trunks and Goten are fighting in the Budokai, and Trunks beats Goten, and the way Vegeta just goes, "Better seed one." He's so funny. He's such a joy every time he's on screen, because he's always keeping up this facade, and he's always being this, edgy, I'm fucking, does he call himself like Dark Lord Vegeta or some shit? Like, at one point he calls himself fucking Super Vegeta. He's fucking amazing. I love Vegeta. He's so great. He's like easily the best written character, and I think Vegeta alone, the fact that Vegeta doesn't come into the story until Z almost makes me say that, like, obviously I understand people who prefer original Dragon Ball, and I don't want to say that original Dragon Ball is worse, or that anyone's wrong for preferring original Dragon Ball. However, I don't understand how, when Vegeta doesn't come until the Saiyan Saga, and he's, like, the best character in the series. One of the other best characters, Gohan, who we don't see until the Saiyan Saga. So that's, like, one of the big things, I think, is that the characters are just so much better. All the characters that get introduced. Someone could say, oh, well, it's because they get more time. It's 26 volumes for Z to 16 for original Dragon Ball. Even if you stopped at 16 volumes of original of Z, I think Vegeta would still be a better character than Tien, or Chaozu, or Yajirobe, or Master Roshi. I think if you stopped at 16 volumes for Z, Gohan would be a better character than Tien, or Chaozu, or Yajirobe, or Master Roshi. I think, Trunks isn't in the story for 16 volumes, but if you look just at Cell Saga, I think Trunks is a better character and more fun than Tien, or Yajirobe, or Chaozu, or Master Roshi. And I'm intentionally leaving Krillin out, because Krillin's a key player throughout everything, and Krillin is good, and I definitely understand why people love Krillin. I love Krillin too, so that's why I'm leaving him out. Because while you could say Krillin and Bulma are like standout characters from original Dragon Ball, I would also argue that they still do things and matter and are important. in Z, and I'm looking at the characters that don't do things and don't matter and aren't important, and I think that they just aren't as good. So I think the complaint that, like, well, all these characters kind of get shafted in Z, it's like, wow, the 3 TN fans on Earth are so upset that their favorite guy with 3 eyes is doing nothing. Oh my god. So back to the villains. Frieza is probably my least favorite of the Z bad guys, but I still think Frieza's good. I enjoy Frieza. I think more than what Frieza, like, who Frieza is, I think what Frieza is really good. The fact that he destroyed Planet Vegeta. Vegeta has, like, this massive grudge against him, and because of that, Vegeta and Frieza's fight, and the fact that Frieza beats him is great. And it gives Goku really good stuff, because Frieza killed his dad. Even if Goku doesn't know that, the fact that we know that Bardock was killed by Frieza is good. So I think Frieza isn't as almost good and enjoyable. And I will say, I've seen now Resurrection F, and I've heard Frieza gets more in Super, so Frieza might end up becoming a great character. But I do think in what's there, he's just not as good as Piccolo, Vegeta, Cell, or Buu. But I still think Frieza's really good. I really like Cell a lot. I know some people complain that they think that Cell is, like, the worst villain for some reason, and that he just comes in and the androids get nothing. But when I look at Cell, right, there's some stuff about Cell that I think is really good. Specifically the way that what's going on with him ties in thematically with, like, Goku's character arc, or even Gohan, where Cell is someone who's the strongest person, right? And he's bored. And so he's just gonna, like, destroy the planet. And he's bored, fighting's fun, so I'm gonna make a tournament, right? I'm gonna see if I can defeat the strongest people. And what I like about that is it's almost he's like the anti-Goku in a way. And I think that makes Cell really interesting. And I also think Cell is just, you know, if people prefer Cell looking like a spooky alien man, I think that's fine. But I think it's almost undeniable that Cell just has this charisma when he becomes perfect Cell. And the fact that he just has this hubris being perfect, right? And it's why what he says when he loses to Gohan is, "But I'm supposed to be perfect," I think is the line. It's something similar to that. It shows, like, Cell is someone who sees himself as perfect. He never had that loss that Goku's had. So, because Cell's never really lost, and he considers himself to be the perfect being, he's arrogant. And he doesn't think he really needs to respect his opponents or anything, because why would he? He's so strong. He's perfect. But he's not perfect. He gets beaten. And and the reason he gets beaten is because Gohan wins, because Gohan gets angry in the best moment of the series, by the way. Gohan gets angry that Cell's, you know, disrespecting. There's a reason that the moment that happens is, it's not just that Android 16 said, you know, protect the plants and the animals and everything that I too loved. It's the fact that Cell steps on his head. Cell has a disrespect for other life because he sees himself as above it. And even though you have Goku and Gohan, who are stronger than any human, they still have respect for beings weaker than them. And so the fact that Gohan is getting angry for them and fighting for basically all of Earth, and same with Goku, is what allows them to channel the strength to win. And so I definitely think that that's a really enjoyable thing, and I really, really like Cell. I think Cell is fun. I think Cell fits thematically. I think he's really charismatic. Really good. I like Cell a lot. And with Buu, I think Buu is interesting, because Buu is, you know, there's 3 or 4 different Buus. You have Fat Majin Buu, you have Kid Buu, you have Super Buu, and they are almost different characters, right? You have Fat Buu, who becomes Mr. Buu at the end and is a good boy. I love Mr. Buu. And I like everything that happens with him, where he only thought he had to kill everyone because he was told that that's what he was supposed to do. And when Mr. Satan was like, you know, you don't have to, he was going to become a good guy. But then he turned into... Did he go straight to Kid Buu, I think? I think he goes to Kid Buu there. After that. And that's really good as well. And I like Boo. I like all of Boo's designs. I think they're all great, especially Fat Boo. He's so goofy. I love there's so many good panels I have of him where he's just being a big goofball that are so fun. And so I like Fat Boo a lot. And then I like the way Super Boo is, he just wants to fight because that's what he finds fun, and so he'll wait for the strongest opponents. It's enjoyable. I like the Boos. I don't think they're like the best villain, but I think Boo is still better than the Red Ribbon Army as a villain, and that's my point really, is that all the villains are charismatic and enjoyable, and while they're all not on the same level of perfection like Vegeta is, even though Vegeta's not really a villain for that long, but you know what I mean. I think that they're good enough that I care about the fights, because you can't just care about a fight if you care about the main character. You have to also care to see the villain be beaten. And I think that's something that Dragon Ball does do well, is these villains are characters, and they're people that you want to see beaten. And there is buildup of the villains before they fight them. Whereas Tao Pai Pai, before Goku fights him, he gets what? Half a chapter of buildup? So that's definitely, I think, a very, very strong part of Z that, for me, put it over Dragon Ball. But, I mean, there's more. Obviously, Z is more action-oriented, right? You go from this comedy-adventure story to very much a battle action series that still has some comedy, still has some adventure, but it is an action series first and foremost. And I think that because of that, well, no. And I think that works better for Dragon Ball, because I would say that, for me, the strongest part of Dragon Ball are their characters. I love all the characters. I think they're great. They're a joy to watch. And so I think when you have something where you can focus more on the characters and less on anything else, it's better. And so that's why I think it works better as an action story, because it's all about the characters and the action, right? Yes, there's a plot. Yes, there's other stuff going on. But at the end of the day, when you have a fight, the two most important things in that fight are the two characters fighting. And so I think that just fits it better. I think Dragon Ball and the way the characters are created and the way Toriyama created the series just works better as an action series. Another thing that I really, really like is that watching everyone grow up and pair off and like marry and have kids is really, really satisfying, right? I mean, original Dragon Ball ends with Goku and Chi-Chi getting married, but we see Gohan, we see Goten later. Vegeta and Bulma get married and have kids. Krillin and Android 18 get married and have kids. And I think that idea of watching these characters grow up, we saw Goku and Krillin as like little kids. And so we get to see them grow up and mature and create families of their own is super satisfying. I fucking love it. It's one of my favorite parts of the series. And that's something that's mainly explored again in Z. And I don't think that's like as big a deal, but I do think it's something that I think people do care about, and I think it is something that at least I cared a lot about, and I thought made Z kind of more fun and entertaining as a story. Another thing is that like all of my favorite, when I think of like Dragon Ball, and again, remember, I read it having no prior thing, so this isn't me thinking about it from when I watched it as a kid or thinking about any of that, but when I think about Dragon Ball and I think about the moments I love, they all come from Z. Just for example, I'll just name 5 of my favorite moments in the series. I don't think these are my top 5 favorite moments. These aren't in any particular order except for the first one, because I do think it's the best moment in the series. They're all from Z. And so when I think about Dragon Ball and these characters, it always goes to Z stuff. So for example, Gohan going Super Saiyan 2 is the best moment in the series, and it's honestly probably one of my favorite moments in fiction. It's fucking great. I think Vegeta telling everyone on Earth to send Goku their energy at the end of the Buu Saga is phenomenal. It's the perfect culmination of Vegeta's character up to that point, and it works so well. I mentioned it already, but I think Piccolo's slow growth to being a good guy, and when he merges with Kami and trains Gohan and all that shit, I think is fucking great. And I love Piccolo, and I wouldn't love Piccolo if it wasn't for that. I think the end of the Cell arc, I think the speech Goku, or Cell Saga, the speech Goku gives right before he takes Cell away, just, the goodbye everyone, I'm sorry I couldn't, tell Gohan I'm proud of you, tell Chi-Chi I'm sorry I couldn't be there, it fucking hit me hard. Another one is, I think, Future Trunks, the way he comes in and the way you watch him slowly get closer to Vegeta throughout the Cell Saga is great, because it's this interesting dynamic on a father-son relationship where they're father-son, but neither have really met the other. And that's fucking cool. And so the fact that you see Vegeta kind of eventually be like, okay, this guy's kind of alright. And then when you get to the Buu Saga and you get to, you know, even like in Super, you see Vegeta being a good dad. And you know that like some of the seeds of that were sown with Future Trunks and Vegeta. And that helped him become that. And that's really cool. I love that dynamic. Another moment I just thought of really quickly is Majin Vegeta and the way Vegeta sacrifices himself for those he loves, for his wife and his kid. Like, it's so good. And I think that while there are moments in original Dragon Ball that I'm not going to disrespect, I'm not going to say they're bad, I just don't think there are as many fucking banging moments. It's insane how many good moments and how like most of the best shit in the series that I think people remember and talk about all come from Z, because it's so good. So I kind of want to end this section on Dragon Ball versus Z with kind of an arc ranking, and I can use that to talk a little bit more about the arcs. Some of them, mainly the Buu arc or Buu Saga, whatever, I'm going to talk about some criticisms here. Actually, I'm going to change my arc rankings from what I have on paper to thinking about it and talking about it more, but I'll get to it in a second. My favorite saga or arc is Cell. I know there are some people that don't like it, and I guess I kind of understand some of the criticisms. For example, people bring up, well, you know, the androids are kind of there, and then they kind of leave and aren't as important. First of all, I think that even then, the androids, they were a threat to the other characters, but, and I could be wrong with this, I'm pretty sure the idea was that Goku was stronger than them anyways, and once Goku healed, he could deal with them. So they're not really that big of a threat to begin with, I think. I also, the idea of villains showing up and then becoming good guys or not really staying villains happens fucking constantly. And I think that if you're gonna, I think that you have to, like, if you're gonna levy the criticism at one thing, you have to levy it at another. So if you're gonna levy the criticism at the androids, Piccolo also does that. Vegeta also does that. And I get that there's more time before they fully become good, but even then, the androids don't fully become good right away. They just kind of decide that they're not really gonna kill people because they gained an appreciation for life, which is a large part of what the Cell Saga is about, is this appreciation for life. So it's almost weird to say that the androids are, like, Android 16 is when people, you know, oh, he's supposed to be so strong and he does nothing. But Android 16 has empathy, and he has this respect and love for life, which is what all of our main characters have, and Cell doesn't have it, and the androids don't have it. But if you almost want to look at it, you know, the androids have respect for each other's lives, and so they fight for each other, and also the fact that Krillin doesn't just destroy the androids, right? Because Android 18 gave him a little smoochie, and he was, you know, simping pretty hard. That there's this, you know, they kind of are thematically on the correct side, so I don't know why they would be villains when they side with our heroes, you know, thematically. So I think it's good. I like the Cell Saga a lot. Again, when I was mentioning a lot of my favorite moments, I love Future Trunks. I fucking adore Gohan going Super Saiyan 2. It is one of the best moments of all time. So I'm going to move through these arcs. I'm going to talk about them. I don't want to talk about them too much because I think I might do a longer video somewhere down the line going through all the arcs. This is just kind of general thoughts on this series from the perspective of reading it for the first time now. So first was Cell. Second, I would give to Frieza, the Frieza Saga. I really like the Frieza Saga. I think that everything with the first part, where it's just kind of Vegeta, Krillin, Gohan, and Bulma on Namek, whatever. I still don't know how to say it. Is fucking good. I actually really like it. I like the fight versus the Ginyu Force. The arc holds Goku out on you for so long, but just long enough, right? Goku's out of it for a long time, but he comes in at the perfect time, and it's so satisfying when he shows up. And, you know, it's cool that, like, Krillin's doing things, and you get to see Gohan do things as well. And so I really like this arc a lot. I think that it's great. Gohan going Super Saiyan, or Goku going Super Saiyan 1 is a great moment, and the fact that it comes out of Krillin's death. And I'll talk about Krillin's death in a second, because I have it set up for another section, but Frieza Saga is really good. Again, I've talked about Frieza, but Frieza versus Vegeta is such a good fight, and the way that Vegeta, like, crying, begs Goku to beat Frieza and avenge the Saiyans is great. So I give Frieza Saga second. Third I have is the Saiyan Saga. I really love the way the Saiyan Saga kind of shakes up everything that comes before it. I think it's really good. There's a lot about it that I like. Again, I like Piccolo training Gohan. Even though I wish we'd seen more of it, I like it. I enjoy Vegeta coming down and kind of the way... I think the Saiyan Saga is good. And I think the most interesting part about it is just the way it changes the manga. Is really interesting, and I love it a lot for that. So originally, before I even sat down to record this video, I had Demon King Piccolo above Buu. But after talking about Buu, I think that I almost forget some of the early parts of Buu a little bit. Or I guess the middle parts of Buu a little bit. I don't think I can in good faith put Buu over Demon King Piccolo. So I'll put my fourth favorite arc is Buu, which I'm going to talk about a lot in a second, because it's something I'll get to. But I think Buu arc's really good. I think there's a lot of fucking great shit in it. Next is Demon King Piccolo. I enjoy the arc a lot. Again, I love that it ends with Goku winning. I think that there's just some enjoyable stuff. I like Piccolo as a villain. I enjoy the way Goku has to grow throughout the arc, so there's that. Next, I have the Budokais, and I just put them all in a row. I think they're all good. They're all really enjoyable, and again, because I like the series as an action series more, I think the Budokais are stronger than the other two. So my ranking for the Budokais is the 22nd, then the 23rd, then the 21st Budokais. But I think they're all enjoyable in their own right. And then I have Red Ribbon, which... Again, I do really like the Red Ribbon Army. I think it's a fun arc. There's a lot of good moments in it. I just don't think there's enough there for me to really get into it. There's not... I feel like Red Ribbon is missing something that stops me from saying it's better than it is. I don't know what it is, and I can't really put my finger on it. But I wish Red Ribbon had, like, more to it. I think, honestly, if I had to say what I would think it is I think it's just missing a compelling villain at the head of the Red Ribbon Army that Goku kind of fights at the end. I know that there's, like, the leader of the Red Ribbon Army, but I don't think he's as... I just don't think it's the same. And then, obviously, is my least favorite arc is Hunt for the Dragon Balls, which it's not bad. It's really short, and it almost just serves as the introduction, like the prologue to the story. So I would feel weird really saying it's not good, but I think it's just my least favorite of these. So that's most of what I have to say for the arcs. So next I'll move on to my last, like, big topic of the video, which is I want to talk about some of the common criticisms that I've seen surrounding Dragon Ball and what I think about them.
Why does the strongest fighter left have to be so darn ridiculous?
I already mentioned some of my criticisms. There are more criticisms that I'm not going to talk about, more things that I've heard people complain about that I think are valid. These are mainly the ones, I call it common criticisms, but this is really me kind of explaining why I think a lot of main things I've heard about the series really don't hold up. So the first one I'm going to get out of the way really quickly, because this video is pretty long already and I haven't even mentioned it, is Goku is a bad father. And if you're watching this and you're already subscribed to me, you probably know Ninmanji also released a Dragon Ball video today, my friend Nun. So if you want to see his video, he made one about why Goku is a good father. The video's not out yet, but I've read the script. I know it's going to be good. Ninmanji's also just a good content creator. So watch this video here. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's enjoyable. The next one I want to talk about is, I think, one that you hear a lot that I kind of feel really weird about. So this criticism is the thing that you'll hear a lot that, oh, well, Dragon Ball has no stakes or is bad because death doesn't matter because of the Dragon Balls. I guess this is fair, but at the same time, it's established from the beginning that they can be brought back. And so I get that it's annoying, but I don't think that death inherently has to be a big deal in everything, right? Say I'm making a manga about ghosts, right? Someone dying can just become a ghost. So I don't think death is something that always has to matter. And I know that Dragon Ball treats death as if it matters, but I don't think that's always true. There are definitely times where people die and characters go, we can just bring them back with the Dragon Balls. So I feel that at a certain point, complaining about the fact that death doesn't matter is just wanting to be wanting the manga to be a story that it's not, instead of buying in to Dragon Ball for that. And it's fine if someone can't buy into the manga or has their own personal issues with it. But I'm talking about when people say Dragon Ball sucks because death doesn't matter. No stakes, it's terrible, garbage. It's like, well, that's not true. Like, there are stakes. It's established, like, most of the villains have the power to blow up the Earth, and if they lose to Goku, or if Goku loses to them, they will blow up the Earth, and then the Dragon Balls don't exist, and then Earth is fucked. So, I don't think it's, like, fair to just say that death doesn't matter and it's bad. Like, sure, it's okay if someone personally can't get into it for that reason, but I don't think that's a fault against the manga, because at a certain point, that's just you wanting it to be something that it's not. I want to bring up an example of a character death that I think does matter a lot, even though they come back later. So, Krillin's death in Frieza is actually really good. And the fact that it's what angers Goku to the point of going Super Saiyan 1 is really good, because Goku doesn't know at this point that the Dragon Balls on Namek can bring him back. So when Krillin dies, they're kind of just going off of like they aren't completely sure that they can bring him back. And, you know, the Dragon Balls weren't even working at that point. Like, they'd already been used. So, Goku at the time thought that Krillin was actually just dead. So, of course he would get upset because he thought Krillin was dead and he couldn't be brought back. So I think complaining that death doesn't matter, it's like, but it matters to the characters in the moment. So even if we know, okay, well, he's probably not staying dead, the fact of the matter is, it matters to these characters, and that's enough for the narrative purpose of the story. If you didn't know, there's even a term for when there's a disconnect between what the characters know and what we know. That's called dramatic irony. It's a normal storytelling tactic. It's not a flaw. So I don't think that saying that, like, death doesn't matter is, like, yes, death doesn't matter that much, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing with the way Dragon Ball uses death. So I almost don't understand that criticism. Another one that I think is kind of in a similar vein is when people bring up that power levels suck and they make no sense. Yes, but that's the point. Like, the only people that use the number power levels as an actual metric to determine things are the bad guys. And so there are times where it's like, yeah, they're stronger than me, but then I trained and got stronger than them. And I think this ties into forms a lot as well. And I think people like to complain that the transformations just kind of come out of nowhere and it's just an easy way to win and they're not learning a new technique. Every transformation that comes about in Dragon Ball Z has narrative and thematic purpose, as well as a reason that it would happen. For example, Goten and Trunks being able to go Super Saiyan as kids. We know Saiyans get stronger by fighting. We know that they fight each other all the time as like playing. So of course they'd go Super Saiyan. They're fighting from the time they're kids. And it also works thematically with kind of the point of part of the Buu Saga, where Goku wants to pass on the idea of him being kind of Earth's warrior and him being this person to someone else. And he first tries to do it with Gohan, and Gohan's not right. And then he tries to do it to Goten and Trunks. But Goten and Trunks are too strong and take it as too much of a joke. And so they also aren't right. And Goku even admits he was wrong for not just defeating Boo and trying to save it for Goten and Trunks, because he wanted to try to give them that and let them grow, and that was the wrong call. So every transformation matters and does things, and I think power levels, like the number themselves, do suck, and they are terrible, but they're kind of supposed to be terrible, I think. And so I don't really get behind this argument as a criticism. I'm not going to say it's like a point in its favor. I just say it's a fact of the manga. Like, yeah, power levels suck, and they aren't really real, and that's the point. The last criticism I really want to talk about is the one that the Boo arc sucks, or that Gohan should have been the main character. And the reason that I'm lumping these together is because Toriyama has said that he originally intended to switch it over to Gohan being the main character. And you can almost kind of see that, there's very much a passing of the torch at the end of the Cell arc, right? Goku passes on to Gohan. Gohan surpasses Goku even. Gohan isn't the main character, and he shouldn't. And Toriyama even says that he realized the story wouldn't work with Gohan as the main character. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So a large part of the Boo arc is that Gohan doesn't really like fighting, and he wants to become a scholar. So while he is being the great Saiyaman, he also slacked on his training. Remember, it was hard for him to even go Super Saiyan. That's not a main character. The reason that Goku is the perfect person for it, and Vegeta as well, is because he has the love for fighting that Goten and Trunks do, but he also can take it seriously and has the love for other creatures that Gohan learns in the Cell Saga, right? And the ability to fight for other people to save them. And yes, Gotenks gets pissed when they find out that their mom is dead. Their moms are dead. But I mean, there's still a difference, because Gotenks treats the fight as a joke, and that's the point. It's not supposed to be haha funny fight just to be haha funny fight. It's haha funny fight because they're not supposed to be the successor to Goku that Goku envisions them to be. And Goku has to come back and eventually take on the role of Earth's warrior and keep it by using everyone's power to charge his spirit bomb to beat Kid Buu. The whole point is that Goku should be the main character, and that both Gohan and Goten aren't the right person for the torch to be passed to, and that the right person eventually is Oob, and that's why Goku goes to train him at the very end of the manga, because now Goku's finally found a successor who sees battling and sees fighting and everything the right way, so that Goku could pass it on to him. Another thing is, people have said that, or I've heard this, I don't know how many people actually believe this. If you believe this, I'm sorry, you're just wrong, that originally Toriyama wanted it to be Gohan, but people liked Goku, wanted it to be Goku, and that's why. There's a character poll that is on screen right now from, I think it's around right after the Cell Saga ended, maybe early Buu, where Gohan is easily number one, and I'm pretty sure I've heard that he had the most votes in history at that point for a character in a character popularity poll. Gohan was more popular than Goku. Popularity is not the reason Gohan was not the main character. The reason Goku stayed the main character is because thematically it made more sense for Goku to be the main character. Another complaint is that it's way too comedic. It's jokey. There's the Goten fight. There's the whole first section. It's just jokes. Even Boo is joking while killing millions of people. But, so I get not enjoying the comedy as much. And I especially get this for people who watched Dragon Ball Z as kids and didn't watch the original Dragon Ball. And so, outside of the filler shit, it goes from being a lot more serious to very, very comedic. And so while I understand feeling that way, it doesn't betray it when you look at the manga as a whole. And it definitely doesn't betray even just Toriyama's writing as a whole. So I don't think it really is fair to be well, it went back to being more comedic. The manga's always kind of been a comedy. Gohan gets look at Gohan's bowl cut. That's a joke.
Look at the top of his head.
And so again, it does go from really comedic to really serious, but arcs changing in the middle happens. I know people complain about it in the Cell Saga. It happens in the Cell Saga and Buu Saga, so you have to be consistent. It happens in, well, no, I guess in Namek it's kind of the same thing the whole time, but that's something I think that if you're gonna levy it against both and you say that it should have been 2 arcs for each or something, or it should have had one tone throughout, I guess I can understand your reasoning for it, but I just don't think it's really that fair. However, I will say that the Boo arc is, I think, the arc where I really was like, man, you gotta slow your roll there, dog. Like, calm down, Buckaroo. You're going a little fast, and I can't keep up. Not that I couldn't keep up, but I think it definitely felt really fast in the Boo arc. So if that was someone's complaint, that's fair. That's my biggest problem with the Boo arc as well. I think it moves so fast, and there's so much it covers that I definitely would like if the Boo arc slowed down a little bit. But again, I think it's great. I think Majin Vegeta is great, and Vegeta's arc in kind of coming not to a close, because I definitely don't think Vegeta's arc is done at the end of Z, but it comes to a very good point in that arc is one of the strongest parts of the series. And so I just don't think that some of the... Obviously, if someone doesn't like the Boo arc, I'm not going to say you're wrong for having an opinion. But I do think that some of the criticisms people give against the Boo arc just aren't fair when you look at the series as a whole. But I don't know. I think some of this might also some of these criticisms might come from people who, again, watched the anime and didn't read it. Or didn't read it till after they watched the anime, so their opinion was kind of already not set in stone, but they already kind of had thoughts on things from it as an anime. And I'm not trying to assume other people's reasoning, but I definitely could see maybe in the anime liking Boo less, like the Boo arc less, if it's way drawn out. I could also see all sorts of reasons, but I definitely think some of the complaints I've heard about it, because I went into the Boo arc and I'd heard it was bad, and so I was expecting, I'm gonna read the Boo arc, it's gonna be terrible and I'm gonna hate it. And I remember I was talking to people about Dragon Ball as I was reading it, and I ended the Cell arc and I was like, oh my god, I fucking love this series. And I was like, I'm gonna start the Boo arc, and whether or not this series is like on my 4x4 of my favorite manga is if I like the Boo arc. And guess what? Dragon Ball's on my 4x4 of manga. It's one of my favorite manga of all time. So it definitely it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. Those are some of the main criticisms I want to talk about. There are more, obviously. There are some more that I don't agree with. There are some more that I do. But those were the main ones I thought that kind of deserved a place to talk about in this video. So now I kind of move into my final thoughts and just wrap it up, because y'all been sitting here listening to me to talk about Dragon Ball for a while, so let's move on. The main thing that I want to say is that, like, overall, I love Dragon Ball. I mean, I just mentioned it. It's great. Great cast of characters, right? You know, Goku, I fucking love. Vegeta, I fucking love. Gohan, amazing. I love Trunks. Krillin, I love. You know, Bulma is great. Chi-Chi is great. Master Roshi's great. Tien exists. Piccolo's great. So there's so many great characters that they're all a joy to watch on screen. And that's actually the reason I just decided to watch Super, even though I've heard mixed things. I just wanted to see more of these characters that I fell in love with throughout the course of the manga. I also think it has phenomenal art most of the time. I think Toriyama's paneling and flow and the way he draws action is so enjoyable. And even though you're getting these massive scale battles where people are hitting each other up in the air, flying around, teleporting behind each other, you always have an idea and this sense of what's going on. And you can even play the battle in your mind because the art is so good and so well put together. The comedy's great. There are a bunch of jokes that made me laugh. I mentioned the panel breaking one, the Goku padding. Everything with Great Saiyaman is funny. I love Goten and Trunks' fight at the start of the Buu Saga, and the way that Vegeta kind of jokes about Better Seed wins, and they're both cheating and flying and using shit that they're not supposed to is great. Everything about Dragon Ball was fucking great. And, you know, it's one of those things where when something is that popular, you just don't get it, right? If you haven't experienced it. I didn't get why Dragon Ball was so popular. I didn't know. Now I understand. It's so fun because now at 21 years old, in 2020, I'm finally able to call myself a Dragon Ball fan and say I get why Dragon Ball is so popular. I understand. And so I'm excited because Dragon Ball has this massive history, and there's all these things. There's all these games, all these movies, extra shows. You know, there's GT, which some people like, some people don't, but that's something. There's Super. There's all this Dragon Ball shit that I can now get into because Dragon Ball as a manga is so strong, and it holds up so well that if someone's watched this video, even though I've talked about a lot of things, and you haven't read the manga, or maybe you haven't read it in a while, or you haven't seen the show since you were a kid, I would suggest reading it. It's 100% worth your time. The manga holds up so well. I put it on the level, I like it more than two of the big three, but it's on, this, basically the same level for me as, Hunter x Hunter and One Piece and Haikyuu and Soul Eater and, all my favorite battle shonen that I've read. Dragon Ball is up there. And it's because this manga is so good and it held up so well that I just fucking love it. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It definitely stands out now to me as one of my favorite stories ever, one of the best things I've just ever really consumed. And so that's kind of, I guess, the point of my video here is that I really love Dragon Ball and I'm not blinded by nostalgia or anything other than I love Dragon Ball for the 46 volumes of manga that Akira Toriyama created in the 80s and 90s. And that was enough to make me a fan because it's fucking good. And I know why it's popular. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If this is your first video of me seeing, I want to do more videos like this. I want to do more shorter vlog style videos. I also do a series of chapter reviews where I read every manga in Weekly Shonen Jump and I talk about them. So if you are current on anything, whether it's One Piece, My Hero Academia, Haikyuu, the newer stuff, Kimetsu no Yaiba, any of those and you're interested in hearing me talk about them, generally with the same amount of passion I have for Dragon Ball, you can go check those out. There should be 4 or 5 up. There should be 5 up on my channel right now and I try to do them every week. I also do an anime podcast with 2 of my friends, What the What and Craftsdorf. We talk about anime. It's pretty funny. It's been enjoyable watching us slowly descend more and more into mania and hysteria as we've gone on. So I would say check the Weeb Club out if you want to hear me monkey over anime girls I like or just lose my mind in general. Also, if you're watching this the day it goes up, I'm actually currently streaming. I'm going to be streaming a Dragon Ball game. I don't know, either Fighter Z or Xenoverse 1. I'm not sure which one, but here's my Twitch channel, and I'll put the game I'm streaming. I might start with Fighter Z, transition to Xenoverse, but either way, I'm streaming a Dragon Ball game. Come hang out. Tell me what you thought of the video. Tell me... We can talk about the series. Ask me questions. Tell me what you think I'm stupid on, what you think you're right on. Also, if it's the same day you don't want to watch the stream, even if you do watch the stream, or, if you're watching it later, comment. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. I'll probably respond to it. I'm not that big of a channel. I don't have that many comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you think you want to see more of me talking about manga, give me you can subscribe. If you've sat through the entire video, even if you hated it and you left a dislike, I thank you. I really appreciate any of that kind of support, and if you think that there are ways I can improve, let me know. I want to do more kind of long form, I don't know if I'd call them manga reviews, but videos talking about manga like this. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. I love you a lot, and I'll see you some other time. Bye.